I'm so excited to have you join me today as I'm diving into the 15 most effective acupuncture points for clearing heat. Heat manifests in various ways in the body, and as practitioners, it's really important to discern between excess heat and deficiency heat or yin deficiency. It's not just about needling points, it's also about understanding the underlying imbalances and applying our knowledge to promote balance and being for all our patients. Today I'm going to guide you through the key differences between excess heat and deficiency heat or yin deficiency. Then we'll dive into the 15 most effective acupuncture points for clearing heat and their use in clinical practice. Welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here, I'm Clara and I create Chinese medicine and acupuncture content for students and practitioners, making it easy to grasp and fun to learn. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. Let's go. When we go back to foundation, at the basis of everything is the yin-yang theory. If you haven't seen my video right here, check it out. It's all on the yin-yang theory and understanding the differences. However, today I wanted to talk about the specifics between yang excess, which is excess heat, and yin deficiency, which is deficiency heat, because it's really important to understand the key differences in the symptoms. So it's more of a tonifying versus excess heat. It's more of a clearing. So it's a very different treatment. However, some acupuncture points can do both, clear excess heat and nourish yin deficiency. Now let's start with excess heat. Excess heat is manifesting as acute or chronic. So acute would be a fever, would be having an infection. While chronic, which is what we see mostly in clinical practice, it's red face, red tongue with a yellow coat on it, a full, strong, rapid pulse. Often there is a person that feels hot during the day, sweats easily when they're hot. They have tendency to have constipation with smelly stools because heat dries fluid. And when the bowel movement is large and full bowel movement, it will be smelly, which is excess heat as well. Also, the person may be very irritable or angry easily, right? Like a volcano with lots of anger coming out, that could come in. Insomnia could come in as well, which would be excess heat, would be the insomnia where we don't sleep at all, or we wake up during the night and we cannot fall asleep, as in liver fire, for example. Now, when it comes to yin deficiency, it is going to be smaller symptoms. So, for example, with excess heat and yin deficiency, the person is really thirsty, specifically for cold drinks, because they want to cool off. With excess heat, the person will gulp a lot of fluid. With yin deficiency, the person will sip the fluid all day. So see, big versus small. Now, the yin deficiency person would have red cheeks and the yang excess would have red face. The yin deficiency person would also have constipation, but when they have a bowel movement, it will be little pebbles, little beads, little sheep pebbles. So differences between the excess heat, which has large formed bowel movement or stools. That makes sense? The person with yin deficiency, because yin is nighttime, will be hot at night with night sweats. While the yang excess, yang is daytime, the person will sweat easily during the day and feel hot during the day. The yin deficiency will have a thin, rapid pulse. It's still rapid because there's heat, but it's very thin because of the deficiency, compared to the yang excess where the pulse is large, big, full, rapid. The tongue of a yin deficiency will be red, just like the excess heat. However, the yin deficiency will have a cracked tongue, no coat, while the yang excess will have a yellow coat. So see, there's a lot of differences here, so it's really important to make the key different symptoms for a treatment. However, because Chinese medicine is always complicated, it's never just anything is one way and that's it. Can someone have yin deficiency heat and excess heat? Yes, they can, and that's very common with liver. A lot of people have liver yang rising or liver fire, and they also have liver yin deficiency at the same time. So when that happens, we can combine our treatment, and usually we clear the excess heat first, and then we nourish the yin. You can do it at the same time. If you want to clear the heat first, do it with acupuncture, and then nourish the yin with diet. That is a good idea as well when we do treatment. Does that make sense? Okay, so today we are talking about the 15 most effective points when it comes to excess heat. I wanted to share a story with you because when I grew up, my mom had excess heat and yin deficiency around menopausal symptoms. So she had the night sweat, she was tossing and turning all night, she'd be very irritable, very angry all the time because she was stressed. So there was a lot of burst, and although I love my mother, sometimes it was really scary because she had a loud voice, and I'm very sensitive, and as a child I was very sensitive. So that was always a tough balance for us to navigate. Is she had a strong personality and I was very sensitive, and I would cry easily when she had the big loud voice. Another thing that my mom did is she smoked 2 packs of cigarettes per day. Yep. And so she had a lot of heartburn and acid reflux. And when I told her it's because she smoked and it affected her esophagus, she was like, no, it has nothing to do with this. Okay. So she had a lot of stomach heat coming up, which is very common, right? Stomach heat is heartburn, acid reflux, bad breath, acid regurgitation. So those symptoms come up from stomach heat when there's a lot of acidity, and smoking can lead to that as well. We can have long heat. Long heat is very common as well, which is to cough. We can cough phlegm that is thick and green or yellow. That is excess heat or phlegm heat in the lung. We can have, like I said earlier, liver yang rising, liver fire with lots of anger, irritability, temporal headaches that feel better on the cold compress. That is excess heat in the liver. We can have a lot of heat in different organs, like large intestine heat, when there is constipation with stools that are large. We can have damp heat, which creates diarrhea with smelling stool as well. So there's lots of heat that can affect different organs. Those are the most common ones we see in clinical practice. Okay, ready? Let's dive in those beautiful, effective acupuncture points to clear excess heat and how to differentiate them so we know which one to use best in clinical practice. Let's start with the best point to clear heat anywhere in the body, which is large intestine 11. Large intestine 11 is fantastic because it will clear heat for acute or chronic disorders. Acute like fever, infection, hives, sore throat, but also chronic for people that have excess heat or inflammation in the body, which can show up as a lot of irritability, like we said earlier, with smelly stools, with inflammation anywhere in the body that comes up sometimes as feeling out of control, getting really angry, getting really rageful, and usually those people end up having bowel issues like diarrhea when they get really angry. So that's a ghost point. And if you haven't seen my ghost point video yet, the link is up here or up here, somewhere in there. Check it out. Now, large intestine 11 is my favorite point for this, but I'm going to give you a little caution. Because it's located at the elbow crease, at the end of the lateral elbow crease, a lot of people use it when there is tendinitis, which is fine, or lateral epicondylitis, which is fine if the symptoms of the pain are pain that is relieved with a cold compress, or that is worse on heat, right? But if the pain is due to blood deficiency, or it's been there for a long time and the person has numbness, tingling that's traveling down the forearm or the extensors, that is not the best point to use because there is blood deficiency. And if the person says, I put heat on it and it feels better, you do not want to clear the heat, right? So we do not want to use large intestine 11. In this case, we can use the points on the extensors like large intestine 10, 9, 8, and anything around it. Does that make sense? That's why it's really important to do a diagnosis even when it comes to pain. Spleen 10 is fantastic to clear heat from the blood. So when there is blood heat, it affects mostly the pericardium and the liver. So what happens is we can use it for menstruation when there's heavy bleeding with pain or cramps. That's usually blood heat with blood stasis in the liver. And that is a really good point to use when it comes to menstruation. It's also a great point to combine with large intestine 11 when there is a lot of hives or heat affecting the skin, even eczema, for example, it works really well. So I love to use that point for that perspective, because remember in TCM, or in the 5-element theory, the earth generates metal, or the spleen and stomach generates long and large intestine, which are connected to the skin. So when there is hives, it's great to use large intestine point and also spleen 10. Stomach 44 is the best point to clear fire. How do we know the difference between heat and fire? Think about this. Fire is worse than heat. Make sense? So when there is heat, we talked about all the symptoms of excess heat. Fire is the same. There is exactly the same symptoms. However, there is an amplification, and the symptom that is added is bleeding. When there is fire, it moves and rushes the blood, so there's excess bleeding or abnormal bleeding. So it could be red, bloodshot, red eyes. It could be heavy menstruation. It could be blood in the urine, or blood in the stools, or nosebleeds. When there is bleeding or vomiting blood or bleeding ulcers in the stomach or bleeding gums, anything that is bleeding with excess heat symptoms, that is going to be fire. And also when there is fire, the tongue is much more dry and there is strawberry prickles on the tongue. Strawberry prickles. If you don't know what that is, you can watch my video on the tongue. It'll be up there for you as well. Now, when it comes to stomach 44, I love that point specifically for stomach issues, for acid reflux, regurgitation, bad breath, bleeding gums, and also for vomiting if it is chunky, sour pieces in the vomit. I know that sounds really gross, but watery vomiting is due to excess cold. Chunky pieces is due to excess heat. Let's not mix them together. Stomach 44, fantastic. Also because it clears fire, it brings the fire down and it allows the person to calm down. So it's great if the person has lots of dreams at night, is manic, or has a lot of excess fire that brings them into a rage or a state of manic behavior. Make sense? That's a fantastic point. I think that heart 5 is misunderstood, or it's not used enough in clinical practice. Heart 5 is the lower connecting point of the heart to the small intestine. And because of that, it is really a good point to use when there is interstitial cystitis. Because remember that the small intestine in TCM is in charge of separating the clear from the turbid for water metabolism to come out as urination. It is more related to fluids than solids. So when there is a bladder infection, we can look at the bladder in TCM, like damp heat in the bladder or heat in the bladder. But if there is an inflammation, like in cystitis, then we have to look at the small intestine. And heart 5 is a great point, specifically combined with liver 5 and large intestine 11, because it clears heat. Perfect when it comes to interstitial cystitis. Heart 8 is a yin spring point, and pretty much all yin spring point will clear heat. So heart 8 is really good for hysteria, for when people get into a manic or hysteric behavior, have a lot of excess fire. It cools that mind, it calms the mind, brings the fire down. Also remember that the heart opens into the tongue. So if there's canker sores or bleeding canker sores in the tongue, this is a really good point for that as well. The difference between mouth sores and tongue sores is the stomach opens into the mouth. So if they are in the cheeks or in the mouth, that's a stomach heat fire. If they are on the tongue, that's more of a heart. Does that make sense? This is how we distinguish the key symptoms when we make a diagnosis, and that leads to better treatment. Kidney 1 had to be there. The most grounding point on the body. So kidney 1 is great because it does both. It helps with yin deficiency and it clears heat for excess heat, excess fire. Specifically for people that feel scattered brain and cannot ground themselves. On top of it, they have a tendency to be very irritable and have insomnia. But that's the kind of insomnia where they are tired, they want to fall asleep, they're exhausted, but they cannot sleep. If you combine kidney 1 with DO20, to help patients that cannot fall asleep even though they're very tired. It's a perfect combination. The highest point in the body with the lowest point in the body, perfect for a great night's sleep. It works like a charm. Kidney 2 is another yin spring point, and they are part of the 5 shu transporting point. If you haven't seen my video on the shu transporting point, check it out up there because it's one of my most popular. Now, the yin spring point, like I said before, clear heat. Kidney 2 is really good when it is for coughing blood, specifically combined with lung 6, which is a she cleft point of the lung, which is great for bleeding of coughing blood. So those two combined, lung 6 and kidney 2, are great for coughing blood. However, we need to figure out why the person is coughing blood. We need to look for the root cause, but it can help for sure. Now, the second thing, if there is very heavy menstruation bleeding, normal bleeding with uterus prolapse, that is a good point, kidney 2, because it is related to the reproductive system. Make sense? Kidney 2 is great when it comes to smelly diarrhea because, as we said earlier, that's an excess heat. And you combine it with spleen 9 and with gallbladder 34 and large intestine 11, and it's fantastic. You can also do the digestive diamond, which is Ren 6, Ren 9, and stomach 25. That is a good combo when it comes to smelly diarrhea. Now, I think that bladder 65 is also underutilized. It's a great point to help detoxify after an insect bite. Bladder 65 helps the body release its natural antihistamine to try to fight that insect bite. So I think that's a great point that's underutilized for acute issues. For chronic issues, it's great to calm the mind when there's a lot of confusion. Let's say for people that have Alzheimer's with excess heat. Do not use it if the person's very deficient. Makes sense? Always use the right point for the right patient. By the way, if you're enjoying my graphics right now and you haven't got your copy of my AcuPoint Made Easy yet, this is your time. The link will be below the video. As you can see, here is the PDF and there is the hard copy. They contain exactly the same points, which are 365. With all my graphics, it took me 2 years to make. I'm so proud of it, and so many students and practitioners have used it for the last 3 years, and the feedback has been amazing. So get your copy if you haven't done that today, because you are going to love it. In this video, I chose 2 points that are located on the palm, unfortunately, heart 8 and pericardium 8. I know they're not easy to needle, but they work so well, specifically when it comes to mental health. And pericardium 8 is a ghost point, which is really good for paranoia and hallucinations, specifically due to excess heat, including hysteria. So those are really good to calm the mind. And it's used for uncontrollable laughter, which often comes from phlegm, heat, misting the mind, because the person is laughing but there is nothing funny and they can't stop laughing very loud out loud. So that could also come into a disorder like schizophrenia. Pericardium 8, perfect for that, as well as paranoia, if there is excess heat. Liver 2, that's an easy one. It brings the liver yang down, right? When there is liver qi stagnation, if someone has a lot of stress, their button's going to be push, 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 and the volcano effects happen, and there's a burst of anger, irritability, specifically women at PMS time when their qi is stagnated because they're super stressed, and then they lash out and they're moody. Oh boy, watch out. So liver 2 can also have temporal headache at the end of the day when the person is stressed, and definitely irritability, anger, and also waking up between 1 and 3 a.m., which is the liver time. That is a really good point to bring the liver yang down and calm the mind. Liver 5 is a luo connecting point. Like I said earlier when I was talking about heart 5 as a luo connecting point, this one connects the liver to the gallbladder, but also the luo collateral ends up around the external genitalia. It's really a very good point when there is external genitalia issue, specifically swelling and heat in the testes, for example, but also for external genitalia outbreak like herpes. And for people that have tendency, women specifically, to have a urinary tract infection after intercourse. That is the best point. I use this also for cystitis when it comes to inflammation, and I combine that with heart 5 specifically. Gallbladder 43 is another yin spring point, and this one is fantastic when it comes to migraine and headaches that are very hot to the touch and that feel better when you put a cold compress. That is the fantastic point for that. It's also used for dizziness and vertigo when there is a lot of heat rising up to the head. Gallbladder 44 is a Jingwa point, so great for fever. However, it is used for dream-disturbed sleep. So when a person has a lot of nightmares and they have excess heat, this is the best point, specifically combined with stomach 40, because stomach 40 clears phlegm when there is a lot of mind issues. When there is recurring nightmare, there is definitely phlegm that's affecting the stomach and the gallbladder. So gallbladder 44, perfect for that. It's also used to clear fire for vertigo and dizziness as well, just like gallbladder 43, but a little bit stronger in clearing the fire and bringing it down. Do 14. If you remember in the channel meridian theory, all young channels converge or pass through do 14 at C7. So all the young meridians, 6 of them, converge there. So it's a hot bed for young, right? So do 14 is the best point to clear heat when it's acute, specifically fever in children, because what you can do is you can use cupping on the child's do 14 to try to release that fever. So that works really well for fever, but also for excess heat affecting the person in an acute state. And because it's located in the upper part of the body, it's really good for asthma due to excess heat, cough, but also the common cold due to wind heat. So do 14, great for acute heat in the body that creates fever. There are many points when it comes to clearing heat. I wanted to give you the 15 most effective ones in clinical practice that I think are just fantastic. It doesn't mean they're the only one, it just means that I really think they're very useful. If you haven't seen my video on the 15 most effective acupuncture points to calm the mind, check it out here because you are going to love it. I hope you have a fantastic day, and no matter what, keep rocking it using TCM.